from sea to Shannon Sea. We are Canadian.
Hello, everybody. My name is Chris VandenBos with Police on Guard, speaking to you here from Ontario, Canada. It is June the 16th, 2021, and the time is 3:04. And I am privileged to be accompanied today by Lani. Great to have you, Lani.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really honored and privileged, and I feel great about being here. I think this is an important conversation, and thank you for having it with me.
Yes, thank you for coming. I honestly am just grateful to be able to have this conversation with you as well. So why don't we start off with you telling us where you're from and where you're coming from, and we'll go from there.
Right. Okay. So with regards to Police on Guard, I live in Squamish, British Columbia, and I am a freedom fighter. So I am one of those people out there who are organizing rallies and bringing people, like-minded people together for the purpose of sharing counter-narrative information. So I am currently in the process of writing my second book, which is called The Brave, Speaking Truth to Power. My first book was The Brave, Courage During COVID. And I'll tell you about the first book, and then I'll tell you about the second book and how it relates to Police on Guard. So the first book is a collection of 20 stories from freedom fighters and doctors and nurses and activists all across Canada who are standing up to government corruption and medical fraud. These are really powerful stories. And I'm also a courage coach. So that means that I teach people how to be brave. And I can go into the backstory of how I attained that title as well, if you like. But for now, the first book of The Brave was meant to teach people how to be brave by sharing stories of people who are being brave. In the situation that we find ourselves across Canada, not very many people have this experience of a national emergency or a pandemic or communism or genocide, depending on which angle you're looking at it from. So not very many people know what to do. And a lot of people are paralyzed with their fear, and they don't know which way to go, which way to run. So that's why I feel passionate about standing up and showing people, this is how you be brave. This is how you stand up for yourself. This is how you use your voice. These are your rights. This is what we're fighting for. And that's why I did the first book, Courage During COVID. And it's been published since May, and it's taken off, and it's going all across Canada. And it's doing exactly what I hoped it would do. It is inspiring people to be brave and to stand up for their rights in the face of government tyranny and medical fraud. The second book, there's 4 books. Okay. I'm really excited. I'm going to try and contain myself, right? But the second book is called The Brave, Speaking Truth to Power. And this is about all of the strongest and most powerful voices across the country that are holding those people in positions of power, the politicians, the mayors, the police, those people in positions of power accountable for their crimes against humanity and for their fraud and for their corruption. Somebody's got to do it, right? So the second book is called The Brave, Speaking Truth to Power. A little side note, this book is green because it is in alignment with the heart chakra. So I'm a very spiritual person, and I do talk a lot about energy, and I talk a lot about spirit and source, and I talk a lot about dimensions. So I'm hoping that your audience will have a basic understanding of what dimensions are when I refer to the 3D matrix or the 5D consciousness, Christ consciousness. So these are all kind of things that I just kind of spit out there without fully understanding if the audience is really picking up what I'm putting down. But okay, so with regards to meeting Police on Guard, so I organized a rally a couple weeks ago. It was probably about 3 weeks ago, May 22nd. And it was a peaceful freedom rally. We were sharing counter-narrative information. We were sharing the truth, which has been heavily censored in our little town here of Squamish. I had some really powerful speakers come out from Vancouver and from across British Columbia. And I also invited Police on Guard to come out and support us and just show my little community here that there are police officers who are staying true to their oath, and they're in support of the freedom movement, and they're in support of us coming together to protest the actions of our government, because that is one of our charter rights, the freedom to assemble. And I thought it was really important that Police on Guard was there, and they showed up and they did a little speech, and it was so assuring and comforting for the community to know we're not doing anything wrong. We have the right to stand up and say, we don't agree with you, to the government, because the government actually is supposed to be working for the people. And if the people don't agree with everything that they're doing, we have the right to say something about it. So the entire day was peaceful. I had some singers and some performers and high vibrational music. I had a bouncy castle for the kids to play and bubbles. And I had a comedian come out to keep it light. And just the entire day was informative. It was inspiring. It was empowering. It brought people together, like-minded people together. This is what I call uniting the lions. Okay, and this is what I do in my books and at the events that I go to. It's all about uniting the lions, right? I'm not interested in waking up the sheep anymore. I want to bring all of the lions together, because the lions are the ones that are going to be moving forward. And the lions are the ones that can organize and collaborate and implement an action plan to start moving forward. The sheep can't help us. The lions are the ones that we need to bring together. So this is why I always talk about uniting the lions. And so the entire day was great. It was amazing. There was no problems. There was no issues. The RCMP were there because I invited them to be there. I asked them to attend, and I just said, can you please come and keep the peace and guide traffic, because we're going to have a march. I didn't ask for their permission. I let them know about a month ahead of time what I was planning on doing. So I wasn't being secretive. I wasn't going around anybody's back. I told them, this is what we're going to do. Can you please show up and do your job? And I was very nice about it. And I thought I had a nice little rapport with our local sergeant, and he showed up. There was one gentleman, First Nations gentleman, that didn't agree with what we were doing, and he was a little bit aggressive. So the sergeant just addressed that issue. That was the only thing that happened. And then when we did our march, they blocked the traffic on the road for us. They were very kind, and there was no problems, no issues. And I considered the entire day a success. Maybe about 150 people from the community showed up, and some people from Vancouver and stuff. Okay, so it was a great day. Everything was awesome. No issues, no problems. I think there was a significant contingent of the community that was opposed to our freedom rally, just because it was counter narrative, and they've been programmed and brainwashed to believe that we are crazy conspiracy theorists and we're going to kill them by breathing fresh air. So there was a little bit of opposition, and those people, I'm sure that they complained to the mayor. And about a week after our event, actually a couple days after the event, I saw on Facebook that somebody had contacted the mayor about our event. And the mayor's response was, it was horrible and disgusting, illegal. We were all going to get tickets, and this should never have been allowed to happen. Something along those lines. I have the exact words. Well, I saw that and I was like, well, that's not true. So I wrote the mayor a letter and I made it very public. And it was addressing her response to my peaceful freedom protestival. And I just corrected her on a number of things and informed her about the day and what she missed out on. And I said, it would have been nice if you would have been there. Like, you were welcome, you were invited. And I asked her, I said, there's a significant contingency of the Squamish residents who are not going along with the fear-mongering narrative that you're propagating, because she's very heavily propagating the vaccine and masks. She wants to wear masks forever now. She said that. And I said, are you open to a counter narrative conversation? I think that a significant part of the community would like to have a counter narrative conversation. Not everybody believes everything that they're told in the media. And the letter was really well written, but it was written in a way that there's no possible way that she could have responded to it without making herself look bad. So I guess I backed her into a corner because I gave her, do you want to have a conversation in public about this? And her response to that came about a week and a half after that. I was sitting at breakfast and I got a phone call from the sergeant, and he said, hi, Lani, I have a ticket for you. And he said, where are you? And I was like, well, I'm having breakfast. You can come and join us if you like. So he did. He came to where I was having breakfast, and I told my girlfriend, you got to film this. You got to film this because we got to film this. So he did. He came and he just gave me the ticket, and he explained it. And I could tell by his mannerisms that he didn't really want to ticket me. He didn't want to fine me. I felt like he was doing that because he was ordered to. And that was the mayor's response to my letter that I sent her. And the whole time I'm thinking, this is amazing. I can't believe this is happening. This is what has to happen. This is exactly what has to happen in order for me to do what I'm going to do next. So I didn't say anything to him when he gave me the ticket, and I recorded it, and then he said goodbye, and then he left. And then I was like, okay, this is the ticket for the rally that I organized, $2,300. I don't even have it on me anymore because I've already handed it in, but it was against the Emergency Act M013. I forget exactly what that states. But,
and if I may ask, when you say you handed it in, just for clarity for the viewers here, when you said you handed it in, did you hand it in to pay the ticket and admit guilt, or did you hand it in to take it to trial to fight the ticket?
Neither.
Okay, elaborate if you don't mind.
Right, I will. Yes. Okay, so, and this is where I get into divine providence and divine purpose and my divine path in life. Okay, so one of the authors in my first book, okay, so all of these freedom fighters from across Canada, they are considered my soul tribe now. They're like my freedom family. And one of them is Jody Lynn, and she's with an organization called Divergent. And this concept that I'm going to be speaking of is a very high consciousness, high vibration, 5D concept. So not everybody is going to get this. Not everybody's going to understand the premise behind it. So I called up Jody and I said, Jody, I just got a ticket for that rally I organized. And she said, awesome, great. All right, don't worry about it. You're going to see what happens next. This is going to be amazing. And I knew what she was talking about because we had been talking about this for a couple months. And so what they do is they help people attain their private citizenship, so that they are no longer associated with the Crown Corporation of Canada. Like, I am no longer a citizen under Her Majesty the Queen any longer. I'm a private citizen. And as such, I'm no longer, or I'm not subject to the jurisdiction or the rules and the regulations of the Crown Corporation of Canada, because I am no longer that fictitious identity on my birth certificate. I have surrendered my birth certificate with an adverse claim to the Attorney General of British Columbia, and started to work on perfecting my interests so that I can attain my birthright abundance in my original estate. And as such, like, this is a big process. Okay, so I'm not going to get into all of that legalese with regards to surrendering my certificate. I'm just going to talk a little bit about the premise behind equity.
Okay.
So equity is the legal system that we have right now, and I am not a lawyer by any means. I've been learning about this as, yes, I've been learning about this as I go. And one of the equity maxims states that equity assists the vigilant, not those who slumber on their rights. And what that means is that if people are completely unaware of their rights, and they're completely unaware of their freedoms that are being taken away from them, if they're completely unaware of their charter rights and all of these things, and they don't have any interest in finding out, researching, studying, learning, then equity is not for them. Equity assists the vigilant, not those who slumber on their rights. So, and this is the same thing with this whole concept of awakening, right? You can't tell people the truth. They have to go learn it for themselves. And this is what the media does, right? It tries to tell people, this is what's happening, this is what's going on. No, the truth cannot be told, it must be learned. You have to become a truth seeker if you want the truth, right? Okay, so with equity, there is, the legal system that we have is not the only system available to individuals that are seeking complete justice and proper remedies. And so there's at law, which is our legal system. And then there's, or it could be called admiralty law or maritime law. And then there's common law. And then there is chancery law or equity law. And then there's God's law. I mean, equity is the closest to God's law or natural law. And these concepts have been around for thousands of years. So the main premise of equity is do no harm. And under equity, or under this legal system, I didn't do any harm. I had the best intentions, and I organized a rally in good faith for my community. I didn't do any harm whatsoever. And so under equity, I didn't do anything wrong. So I've taken that ticket, and I've taken my adverse claim, and I've submitted it to the Attorney General for processing. And what I am expecting to get back in the next little while, maybe in the next couple of weeks, is a confirmation that they've received all of my paperwork and that my private citizenship is going through. So, and then when this happens, as a private citizen, because we're no longer under the jurisdiction of this current legal system, if I were to be stopped by a police officer at the side of the road, and they were to ask for my identification, and I were to show them my adverse claim or ask them to look up my fictitious name that I'm no longer associated with, then they would have like a red light that says do not detain or do not engage. And that's what will happen.
I find it interesting, right? Because we obviously come from two very schools of background and thought in regards to this, right? As police, I find it interesting. I'm just going to segue into a little bit of background as it pertains to police officers in Ontario specifically. So when we get hired and we go through the training process of internal training out of police services, and then they send us off to Ontario Police College, which is located in Elmer, Ontario. I'm sure many people of late have heard of that town. We are taught ad nauseum the importance of our adherence to the charter rights and freedoms of Canadians. And at the end of our training, we do a thing which is called March Past, where that's kind of like we salute as we're walking by saying we've been trained. And then shortly thereafter, we have our swearing in ceremony. And that is when we take an oath. And that oath, as others that have seen my interviews would have heard me talk about this, but I'll gladly say it again, that oath is to Her Majesty the Queen, which is a separate direction than what you're taking. But what falls in with that as well is immediately after swearing that oath to Her Majesty the Queen, we are also swearing an oath to the Constitution and the Charter of Rights and Freedoms of all Canadians. So when we're enforcing these laws, we have to be really careful to walk in line with the charter and the actionable steps of whatever we're doing as police. Because if we don't, we have seen countless times charges being dropped for a charter breach violation. And when you're speaking about having this get together, this freedom rally in BC, in Squamish, I'm just going to go back to what the charter says. And the charter says under fundamental freedoms, everyone has the following fundamental freedoms: freedom of conscience, as you've mentioned, and religion; freedom of thought, belief, opinion, expression, including freedom of the press and other media of communication; freedom of peaceful assembly; and freedom of association. When I hear you outlining what happened in Squamish, and I'm reading that in correlation with the charter, it obviously raises a Spockian eyebrow for me, right? Because to me, you were exercising those fundamental freedoms as outlined and as I understand them as a police officer. And, you might have a completely different direction in terms of what spirituality and direction in spirituality you've taken, what you believe, as so many Canadians do. We all have different perspectives, life experiences that lead to different opinions on different matters as it pertains to faith. It's all irregardless as it pertains to the charter, because it doesn't say one specific religion. It doesn't say, that if you're of a certain religious background, you're protected. It's everybody, all Canadians. So I find it interesting that you and I get to sit here today, obviously coming from different backgrounds and experiences, but we both have one underlying commonality. And that is that we believe we should have the right to, religious expression, peaceful assembly, association, and so on.
Yes.
And that is the oath we as police officers took, was to adhere to that, because that is,
Right.
It is for our fellow Canadians. That's not for our government. That's for the police to say, we're swearing an oath to make sure that we are going to respect the charter rights of Canadians. And to me, that oath was a promise. And I can tell you our organization has grown because there are so many officers from BC all the way across to the other end of the East Coast, the Maritimes, that are joining on board, and they're all saying the same thing. They're all saying, I made an oath, I made a promise, and I intend to keep my promise.
Right.
And that's why we're here, and we're honored to be able to have this conversation, because we're able to get more perspectives, right?
Oh, I want to tell you all the reasons why I love everything that you're doing. Police on Guard is so incredibly important for all of Canada and for all of the other countries to embrace the officers within them that are staying true to their oath. But also, you have to agree that there are some good people and some bad people out there. There are some corrupt people and some people who are of a higher vibration or consciousness, right?
As a police
And
officer, yes, I've seen evidence of this.
okay, but
For
also,
sure.
Chris, as a police officer, you'd have to agree that there are some corrupt police officers out there. And there are some police officers like yourselves and your organization that are staying true to their oath, and they're staying true to the charter rights and protecting the rights of the people. So it's my understanding that you guys don't work for politicians. You do not work for the government. You do not work for the mayor. The mayor's not your boss, right? The people. You're a public servant. You work for the people, right? So when it comes to my mayor in my town, the only reason I got that ticket is because that officer was following orders from a corrupt politician. Now, how do we get around this? How do we approach this? The legal system is not necessarily working for us in this case. So
Well,
this is
you
where
know what, to
equity
speak to
comes
that,
in.
sorry, I don't mean to cut you off, but I just want to make sure I insert it. That's why, I mean, in this particular instance, you asked me that question. Firstly, I'll address the corruption piece. I think the evidence of corruption is emblematic all throughout humanity. There's going to be certain segments of our populace, whether it's as a police officer, as a politician, as a doctor, as a newspaper delivery boy who's skimming off the top when he's collecting his dues at the end of the week. There will be certain, you know, numbers of people that might be more inclined to take advantage of the authority or the platform they've been given. But what I can also say is there are a large swath, and I would say the large majority of police that did sign up to try to do right. Just like people in our daily life and our daily walk, whether it be doctors, you know, there might be somebody that goes off script and does something wrong. But for the most part, in my experience through life, I've had doctors that did nothing but give me abundant care and was excellent and really had good bedside manner and truly took an interest in doing right. So I don't want to subscribe to the potential that it's worse than it is in my mind. I do believe that there's a small percentage of people that could maybe more inclined to do the wrong thing, but I do believe in the inherent good of the people and that people
Right.
do generally want to do right. And then I'll kind of segue into the part about, you know, what legally we can do about it, the legalities that are in place. So that's why when Rocco Galati, who is our legal counsel in regards to our statement of claim, I would let him speak to that, because as it pertains to taking direction from politicians, as it pertains to any of those things, that's what we're seeking clarification from the court on, because there seems to be a bit of a disparity in regards to that information. And Rocco, if you follow the videos that he's released and the media release that he did with us in regards to our statement of claim, he outlines that. So I'm certainly not going to speak on his behalf, because that's his expertise. I can definitely speak to the charter and the oath, because that's what I took and that's what I know.
Yeah.
But I would say that I'm glad that we're able to go in this direction, and we're able to hopefully get that clarification.
Yeah, and you know, I couldn't agree with you more. In all different walks of life, there are going to be people who are, see, from my perspective, I see people who are operating from their ego mind and people who are operating from their higher soul guidance, people who are connected to their intuition and their instincts, and they might be spiritual or religious or both. Or I'm not a very religious person, but I'm an extremely spiritual person, which means that I am incredibly intuitive. I am an empath. I am connected to my own divine higher self guidance, and I am being led and I am being directed and protected in every move that I make. I fully believe that. And from our previous conversation, I remember you telling me a story, I think it was of your grandfather in the war,
Yeah.
and how many lives he saved and how he received a Medal of Honor, and how you felt like this was a part of your lineage, this fight for our freedom, this fight to do what is right, this fight to do what is just. So I know that you have that higher consciousness concept and ability to see the good in people, but also to understand that not everybody is operating from their divine guidance. Some people are operating from their ego mind, which is their traumatized inner child that they haven't processed, like a lot of unhealed trauma inside of them.
Mm.
And when an officer is put in that position and he's operating from that place, that lower vibrational place of excessive authority, like I'm the boss of everybody, like that kind of authority, or excessive abuse or physical restrainment or anything like that, any of those lower vibrational things, those ego driven things, then those aren't necessarily the people who are signing up to become a part of Police on Guard. And there is a division here. There is kind of a division, not only in the world in general, of the people who are unconscious, unaware, and the people who are awake and enlightened, but also between the people who believe in this pandemic and the people who don't believe in the pandemic, the people who are driven to do what's right, and the people who are driven to do whatever they have to do to buy a car. You know, if you're driven by money and power and greed, then you are operating from the ego mind in the third dimension. But if you are driven towards peace and prosperity and abundance and, you know, this higher vibrational concept of community and unity and love and compassion and courage, that's 5D. There is a division in the Bible. It's called the separation of the wheat from the chaff. And right now, this is kind of what's happening everywhere. Unfortunately, most of the people who consider themselves black sheeps of the family are the ones who are questioning everything. They're the ones who are awake. They're the ones who ask counter-narrative questions because nothing makes sense. And I, unfortunately, have been I don't know if it's fortunate or fortunately, but I've been a black sheep in my family my entire life. And I mean, it is unfortunate because I'm sad that I'm no longer connected with any of my family. And I don't think that they're bad people. They have just been indoctrinated and brainwashed and programmed to believe everything that they hear on the mainstream media, which is all fear-mongering propaganda and lies. So, and this is why we have a freedom movement, right? Because the freedom movement is all about freedom of speech, freedom to assemble, freedom to believe, freedom from censorship, freedom from tyranny, freedom from communism. These are all the things that the freedom movement are working towards. And so yeah, this whole entire concept of 3D and 5D. So equity and equity law, it's akin to God's law, which requires somewhat of a Christ consciousness. So I don't necessarily believe that Christ is going to rise again from the dead, but his consciousness, I think, is going to be implanted in everybody that is ascending to the higher vibrations. Everybody is going to have a Christ consciousness of unity and compassion and love and prosperity in the higher dimensions. And I think that's what it takes. It's going to take that 5D consciousness to even grasp this concept of unity. But moving forward, just so you know, I do foresee everybody will be attaining their private citizenship in the future. And I don't know if it was you that I was talking with, but in our last conversation, but this government is so corrupt from the top down in so many different ways and so many different layers. How do we dismantle or remove a corrupt political system using the legal system that created it?
It's definitely a difficult question, right? Because from our perspective as police, we work in law enforcement, and we took the oath, as I mentioned, and we should intrinsically be out there doing what is right. That should be the end result. When it comes to doing your job as a police officer, you have your rules and regulations internally as a police officer that guide you in terms of the practice that you kind of, should stay away from doing this, or you should be doing this and follow these orders and lines, when going to this type of call. But when it comes to doing the job proper, it's about doing what's right. And I did want to bring this up because when it comes to doing what's right and understanding more of the bigger picture, I think it's important. And I'm just gonna cite a CBC article. And I'm not a CBC viewer typically or a CBC reader, but I found this article to be rather interesting because it is classified as the mainstream. And the article is titled, "Number of Youth in Hospital After Suicide Attempts Tripled Over 4-month period under COVID-19. This article was released by CBC on March 18th, 2021, and it sourced McMaster Children's Hospital's findings. And it says that referrals to eating disorders I'm just going to go to the top here to make sure that I get all the points in this article because it's important and it's really relevant to our conversation where I'm going to go with it afterwards. It says referrals to eating disorder programs increased by 90% in a 4-month period, McMaster Children's Hospital says. Youth admitted for medical support after a suicide attempt has tripled over a 4-month period compared to last year, pre-COVID. The hospitals also said that patients are staying in hospital longer due to more serious attempts at suicide. McMaster Children's Hospital says a large number of these youth have reported COVID-related issues such as a lack of social interaction, increased conflict at home, and the inability to rely on friends as main contributors. And here's a quote: "We are all coping with multiple stressors brought on by the current pandemic," says Dr. Paulo Pires, psychologist and clinical director of Child and Youth Mental Health Outpatient Services. The hospital said that over the same time period, youth admitted with substance abuse disorders has doubled compared to pre-COVID, the hospital says. In particular, the youth of potentially deadly opioids has increased. The number of cases admitted to hospital with predominant symptoms of psychosis has doubled, with the large majority related to substance abuses. These are coping strategies. As police, nothing pains a police officer more when you sign up and you put on those blues and you take your oath and you're out in the street and you're wanting to do right. You're wanting to protect the good from somebody doing bad. And when nothing rattles your every fiber and to the core, nothing rattles you more than when something harmful or horrible happens to a child. And I know I've mentioned in previous articles that I've struggled with PTSD for over a decade now as a result of what I've seen on the road. And the nightmares that still come back to haunt me are the ones that are associated with children. And now we're seeing medical experts and newspaper articles speaking to the impacts that COVID and the lockdowns are having on children. And the officers that are on the front line that we're in communication with are speaking to the horrors that they're seeing as well. And, and it's not just that, you drive through the small towns of Ontario, you see the businesses are shuttered. I've lost friends to suicide. I've lost my grandfather who passed away this past year, and we couldn't even have a funeral for him. And the rest of our family is still wanting to engage in that mourning process, to be able to celebrate this man's life, and we're not able to do so. And as police, as I've said before, and I'm going to continue to say till my dying day, it's easy for people that are in a position of prosperity to say do the right thing when they're not looking behind the curtain to see how this is all impacting the disenfranchised and the people that don't have another option to sustain themselves. And children are being, as this article speaks to, are dealing with all kinds of major issues, whether it be abuse of substances or suicide attempts. This should be alarming to everybody. And I'm going to source this article because as it pertains to the officers doing the right thing, this is the question I asked myself. Is going against the oath that I took and the charter that has been in place since 1982, and that result leads to this impact on our children and people across the board, what is the right thing? And that's why we're going forward with our court challenge. And that's why I do have faith in it. I know some people have lost faith in our legal process, but they should take heart in one fact. This is the first time Rocco Galletti is fighting on behalf of the police. So that tells you that he's clearly in agreement with what we're doing. Yeah. And we have full faith and confidence in his expertise and acumen. And that's as far as I'm going to go in terms of speaking to the statement of claim, because I have to be careful. But I do have faith in this process. And I can tell you that all the officers that are on board with Police on Guard are wanting to do that right thing.
Amazing. And this is why I resonate with your organization. And I'm so appreciative, because it's very clear to me that it takes a certain kind of consciousness and awareness to do your job, first of all, and to be able to discern for yourself the difference between right and wrong, and your interpretation of the truth and a lie. And I think that this is a really important court case with Rocco, and I'm really grateful that he's taking that on. And I think that good things are going to come out of it. But I also believe in the next little while, maybe in the next couple months, maybe in the next year or so, that all of the judges, all of the justices, all of the lawyers, all of the law enforcement officers across Canada, they're going to be re-educated on a new constitutional law, a new system of governance. And it's going to have a lot to do with equity moving forward. This is what I think. This is, you know, and I didn't just pull that out of the air. I mean, I've done a lot of homework and research over the years, and I do believe that that's coming. And it's all that's going to do is reinforce all of your beliefs and your definition of what's right and wrong. But equity has a lot more power than the current legal system.
And that's what I like though too, is we kind of have both sides covered, don't we?
Yeah.
Right? You have police on guard going with the law that is in place and the law that we have been enforcing and adhering to, and you're covering a different dynamic that I'll be honest with you and saying I don't know much about.
That's
but
okay. Nobody does. Nobody does. Oh my God. Like this whole entire concept of equity, like it's been a secret. It's been hidden from us since the day that we were born. We became a part of became a corporate identity, a part of a crown corporation of Canada. We became like property. And our birthright abundance and our life estate was then taken from us. And we never knew any of this when we were born. We didn't know that we had to submit an adverse claim for our birth certificate or our live birth papers. And then when we signed up for our driver's license, we did it again. We signed our name and we admitted to being this fictitious identity, this straw man. We said, okay, that's me. We identified ourselves with it, but it says on the birth certificate or on the driver's license not to be used as identity. And then when our social insurance number, we did that when we were 16 too. And even on the social insurance agreement, it says this is a voluntary process. We volunteered to become a part of this corporation. So none of us knew. We were all tricked. We were all deceived. So becoming a private citizen is all about doing your research and learning about the original law and learning about our original rights and taking back our being, our not person, but like as a woman, I am a private citizen. And this is, they said I could make up any name I wanted. So the way that my name came about was, I've always liked the name Braven because I'm a courage coach, right? I teach people how to be brave. And I thought, well, maybe I'll change my name to Braven. But then they said that I could give myself a title, meaning that I could be queen. I could be anything I wanted to. I thought lady was a little bit more appropriate. So the lady just signifies that I'm a private citizen. Braven means that, well, I'm a courage coach and I teach people how to be brave. And of the pride is because I unite the lions. This is my path and my purpose. I'm bringing people together, not just people, but people who are capable of making a difference and moving forward courageously. So that is a pride. A collection of lions is a pride. So Lady Braven of the Pride came quite naturally to me. It still feels a little bit weird to use that kind of a title, but I'm no longer associating with my last name. And I have surrendered my birth certificate and my driver's license and my passport and all of these things. I no longer need them as a private citizen. So the other thing that I wanted to mention, while you were talking, something else came up to me. Yeah, well, this concept of moving into a new system. So, I mean, I think you would agree that there's a lot of corruption out there. Would you agree with that?
Well, when it comes to agreeing or disagreeing, I can say by my observations, my eyebrow is raised.
Okay, that's good enough.
I'll put it that way just to be cautious and careful, because
Okay.
as I mentioned before, I don't ever want to say anything that could be damaging to the statement of claim. I'll let the courts make that determination in the hands of a very capable lawyer representing our case, but my eyebrows raised.
I understand completely. From my perspective, I don't think there's anything that I can say wrong, but from my perspective, I see a lot of corruption. I see corruption in the legal system, in the banking system, in the schooling system, in the medical system, pharmaceutical system, all of these different systems around the world that that comprise the matrix. All of these different systems, they're very corrupt, and they're all driven by money and greed and power. And this is what I see. So what's happening right now with this entire pandemic is that all of these corrupt systems around the world, not just in Canada, I can see them. There's a light that's being shined on them, on all of the corruption right now. We're shining a light on the corruption. And the only way that we can take down the corruption is if we shine a light on it and say, that's corrupt. And then enough people get together and take down the system piece by piece. And that's what has to happen. And that's what is going to happen from my perspective. So about 6 years ago, I remember looking around. I work in Hollywood, or in TV and film. I worked in Hollywood for 20 years. And Hollywood, well, Mel Gibson said that Hollywood was built on the blood of babies. I mean, from my perspective, Hollywood is incredibly power-driven, money-driven, greed, corrupt. Hollywood is corrupt. I can say that because I was a part of it for 20 years. And I remember looking around about 6 years ago and thinking, this is so messed up. Everything is so messed up. This whole world is so messed up. The only way that it could possibly get better is if the whole house of cards comes crumbling down. And I thought, well, that'll never happen. That'll never happen in my lifetime. A revolution is exactly what is needed to take down a corrupt system. And then this pandemic comes along. And from the very beginning, I had already been courage coaching for 3 years when that happened in 2020. And so I'm very familiar with these ideas of standing up for yourself and being brave and, processing fear, learning from our fear, overcoming our fears, feeling our fears and whatever our fears have to teach us, because our greatest lessons in life always come from overcoming our fears. So this idea of recognizing fear at the beginning of this pandemic, I immediately saw fear mongering everywhere. Be afraid, be afraid, be afraid. And when people are trying to make you afraid, there are two reasons. It's because they want to control you, or it's because they are also afraid and they need you to be as afraid as they are because they feel more comfortable when you are being equally afraid.
Well,
So,
and you know what? I wanted to speak to that quickly because before I forget, when you're watching a hockey game with your kid, and my son is 7, and he's got an Austin Matthews jersey, and he loves the Toronto Maple Leafs. So every time the puck drops, he wants to be tuned in. And in short order, I'm realizing, I'm like, these commercials in between, like watching these fear intensive commercials about doing the right thing, and it ends with somebody with a flat line and the beep going off that they've deceased in a hospital bed. And I'm watching this and I'm turning it off because my 7-year-old doesn't need to see this. He doesn't need to see this. He doesn't need to live his life in fear. And that's the motivation for me turning it off. But it obviously begs the question of how much of an influence does that have on everybody's fear levels?
What's going on right now is definitely a psychological war, and they are definitely using gaslighting, shame, guilt. They're using everything to try and coerce you and make you do what is socially, socially acceptable. Well, I mean, this is peer pressure, right? Peer pressure at its worst. Like when I was in high school and somebody asked me to do drugs, I was told if I didn't want to do drugs, I just say no. Well, right now, society is asking me to do all these things that I don't want to do. What am I supposed to do? Just say no, right? It's peer pressure, it's gaslighting, it's shaming. It's like people have come up to me, my friends have come up to me and told me, Lani, your cavalier attitude is going to get somebody killed. Oh my God. And this is where I had to really wrap my head around the concept that we're coming from different perspectives, different levels of consciousness and awareness. because the people who are believing everything that they're told on the mainstream media, they're not making their own choices. They're just parroting everything that they hear on the TV. And the TV definitely has an agenda. And their agenda is to keep you in fear, because when you're in fear, you're easily controlled. And when they can control you, they can get you to do absolutely anything that they want to. And the entire purpose of this entire pandemic, I'm not sure what your beliefs are around this, but I'm just going to tell you mine. The entire purpose of this pandemic was always from the beginning to inject people with a toxin. And they called it a vaccine. And the only way that they could do that is if there was an emergency. And the only way that they could have an emergency is if they created one. So, and this is how it's all kind of transpired. You don't have to answer that. I know that you don't want to say anything.
No, it's not that I don't want to say anything, Lani. It actually allows me to bring up a really good point. And the point is this. I've always subscribed to the belief that fear exists in the absence of information. When you become more informed and you get more information that is understandable and relatable and applicable, you can start to weigh all of the information that's being presented from both sides and make an informed decision. And when it comes down to my fellow Canadians, we have done quite a few interviews with some really, really highly credible, medical scientists, doctors, lawyers, obviously, and not because we want to speak to it, because that's not our position, that's not our background. As a beat cop, I'm not exactly, going to be published in the Lancet for any medical research that I've done, so I'm certainly not going to speak to that sort of dialogue, because that's not my place. But we've allowed them to, hoping that the public and the people across Canada, the police officers as well, can watch that information, absorb that information, and then make an informed decision as to where they stand. But what comes with that is also, I am encouraging everyone, all of my fellow Canadians and my fellow officers, and everyone in the medical profession all across the board, to take a look at the charter, read the charter, know the charter. It was put in place to protect the people, and the police, as Sir Robert Peel, this is one of the founders of community policing. He's been hearkened to every time we're in a classroom at OPC at the police college. One of the things that stuck with me, and I know everybody else in our group, is that the people are the police and the police are the people. So if the people know their charter rights and freedoms, and the police remember the oath that they took to the Constitution and the charter itself, then there really shouldn't be much more of a conversation as it relates to some of the things that are happening that we're seeing. But since it's still happening, that's why we are in the position to have to take it to the courts and let them speak to it and let the evidence fall where it may.
Right, absolutely.
But information is key.
I love that you said that. I always believe that information is light, and lack of information is darkness, right? So at my rallies, I really want to empower people. I want to empower them with information, but not just any information that they're being fed, information that's counter narrative, because they have to be given maybe some of the mainstream narrative and maybe some of the counter narrative, and they have to decide for themselves and discern for themselves the difference between the truth and a lie. So when it comes to professionals and scientists and doctors and experts, there's experts on both sides of the fence. And there's the difference between science and science is science, real science, and science that's being paid for, right? So trust the science. Which science are you going to trust, right? Just so you know, I would never consider myself an expert in anything. Actually, anybody who does consider themselves an expert, in my eyes, I'm thinking, you think you know everything? And do you know what an ultra-crepidarian is?
No, you're going to have to enlighten me.
There's a crazy word, ultra-crepidarian. I adopted this word because I am not an ultra-crepidarian. An ultra-crepidarian is somebody who speaks from outside of their experience or expertise, AKA a bullshit artist. I have some friends that are really good bullshit artists because they can sound like they know what they're talking about, but they actually don't have any experience with that. So I personally don't like to talk about science or facts or, not facts, but I don't like to talk about virology or I don't even really like to talk about politics because I don't understand all of these bigger concepts. I didn't go to school for those things. I never learned about them. What I always advocate for is that as a spiritual person, I have a book here. This is my Lionheart Activation Journal. And it's a 30-day journaling program to build a brave and abundant mindset. And what that does is it gives you some of the skills and the tools that you need to process your emotions, to overcome past trauma, to develop your clair senses, to forgive people. That's often the hardest thing to do. To manifest, to create the life that you want, to develop your skills of discernment. So with a brave and abundant mindset, if you're connected to your own divine intuition and higher self guidance, there isn't anything that you need to know in this world that isn't already inside of you. The answer is already inside of you. So when it comes to like all of these like charts and graphs and scientists and doctors, and I don't care if you are the head doctor, Dr. Fauci or whatever. I don't care who you are. I don't need to put anything in my body, and I know that, and I don't need anybody else's advice or permission, or I don't need to seek knowledge from somebody else when my body and my soul and my being is telling me I don't need that.
Well, especially with the right to informed consent, right? That's a big thing that people, myself included, needed to be reminded of throughout this process was informed consent, which is having all the information
Right.
that you wish to kind of read through and absorb and process, and then you make a decision based on that information. That's informed consent. And but also it speaks to the other point you made when it comes to talking about things that are a bit of a lightning rod issue, right? Like that there's no debate. I mean, my understanding of a democracy was that we should be having debate, where we should be having conversation, and peacefully so, and respecting one another's perspective, and not acting like you're the smartest guy in the room, because you might learn something if you actually have a closely tuned in ear. So that's where I stand, and and I think that a lot of people are starting to really become more vocal in that respect. And my hope from Police on Guard's perspective, I know we're all feeling this way, is we're hoping that people will learn their charter rights, will learn their rights, will find themselves, and that we can come to a solution peacefully without violence. That's not the end result. And it breaks my heart when you hear that some people have gone that route, and we're really hoping to avoid that at all costs. But at the end of the day, what needs to happen is conversation. We need to have conversation.
I couldn't agree with you more. And this is why I'm so honored and I'm so excited to share the story of Police on Guard in my next book, Speaking Truth to Power, because this is a story that needs to be shared with all Canadians. Why are you guys choosing to found this organization to bring these like-minded police officers together to stay true to your oath? Like, there is such a powerful story behind that, and that story is going to bring so many people so much comfort and respect for the law enforcement across the country, because the counter side to Police on Guard is all of these officers that are just doing what they're told by corrupt politicians, and they're using excessive force and abusive behavior and this authoritative, I don't know what it, dictator kind of personality. Those officers, they're the ones that make us not want to trust the police. They're the ones that make us not want to do what the police tell us that we have to do. And they're the ones that make us, like in the United States, they had the defund the police. I know that that was all like a big show as well, but I want to support the police. I want to believe in the police. I want to trust the police. And that's why your organization is so incredibly important at this in particular juncture in the history of humanity. And
Big shoes to fill.
well, yeah, but also I do believe everything's happening exactly the way it's meant to happen, right? And you were guided to go down this path and to start this organization. And I think that I think it's an incredible thing, and I'm so grateful. And I'm so grateful to share your story in my book.
Well, and I just wanted to say that exactly. Thank you for offering to share our story in your book. I think that that's incredible. I can't wait to read it. For everyone that's watching, I do want to say that, you know, it is big shoes to fill. I wasn't joking when I said that. It is big shoes to fill. But at the end of the day, you know, for people that have kind of felt that strained relationship with police, especially since COVID has started and with the things that we've seen happening across Canada and in the news and stuff, I just want to give that assurance, like I said before, that when we took our oath, that was a promise we made. And I keep my promises, and I can say those that are in the group with me, the other co-founders and people working on the board and people working on the scenes and speaking at rallies and doing outreach and helping people, you know, in terms of food banks and stuff. Like, we're doing everything that we can to try to repair that strained relationship, because we know we got into the job for the right reasons, and we're going to continue to do that. And if it means that we end up losing our jobs and they tell us that we can't continue, that's a bridge we'll cross when we get there. But until then, we're going to use the platform we have to do what we can to try to right the ship. And you know, if it comes at a consequence, to me, it's worth it. So, you know, I'm just very grateful. And for everyone listening, if they want to get involved somehow, if they want to find out how they can help, there's a way that you can help individually, and that is you can go onto our website. You can print off a placard that says, "I stand with Police on Guard," and it speaks to your charter rights. You can put it right in your front window, just in case you have any visitors, welcomed or unwelcomed, so they know where you stand. Secondly, if you would like to donate, Rocco Galletti has a section set up on his website on the Constitutional Rights Center for the police action. So if you would like to donate and assist in that regard, because he is representing us pro bono, and we are going by way of donations to support our cause. And also, as far as these interviews go and having the opportunity and the privilege to be able to have this dialogue with you, Lani, it's been awesome. I love being able to hear from my fellow Canadians from different various backgrounds, what it is that they're doing, what is it that they're feeling and experiencing, what rays of hope are they seeing amidst all the darkness that we're faced with. And it's just so encouraging to be able to share together and speak together and hopefully reach out to more and more Canadians as a result.
Amazing. I have one question.
Yes, absolutely.
Before we go. Okay, so how would I approach or inform or how do I bring this police on guard information to my local sergeant? I want him to step up. I want him to reaffirm his pledge. I want him to know that there are officers across the country who are staying true to their oath, and that, I don't know, does he even know that he doesn't have to follow the orders of a corrupt mayor?
That's a question you'd have to ask him.
Right.
But I can say, if you're wanting to open people up to the information that's out there to help and assist them in making a more informed decision, on our website at policeonguard.ca, we have an abundance of resource material. We have a lot of video clips and interview clips of Rocco speaking to the legalities of things. We also have information as it pertains to the charter, as it pertains to the Constitution. So getting people informed, getting this sergeant that you mentioned, a friend of yours or an acquaintance, whatever it might be, just to be aware of what actually is stated and what is the actual course of action that we should be taking. We do speak to that because to us it comes down to the charter under oath, and it's as simple as that. But there's a lot of good resource material that quantifies that. So I would suggest that you refer our website, not just as a shameless plug, but also as an opportunity for people to get more informed as well.
Yeah, I'll have to send him an email, if he'll even open it, from me with regards to all of the police on guard information. I would really like him to step up. I'd like all police officers to step up and become a part of your organization, because it's really so much more assuring for the communities in which they serve. And I think it would be supportive for them to know that that they have a brethren across the country, and an organization that would support them, standing up for their own oath that they took.
And we're hoping the same thing, but if at the end of the day all we get out of it is that they know this fact, that we have active and retired officers from BC all the way to Nova Scotia. We have every province covered, and we have more and more joining by the day. It's getting difficult to keep up on the vetting process to make sure that they are in fact police and not just trying to get their way into our organization for a nefarious purpose potentially. We don't know, but we're just trying to be prudent. But it's hard to keep up because we have so many people that are joining on board saying, we agree with your message, we agree with what you're trying to do, how can we help you? So to my fellow Canadians all across this great nation, we are moving forward, we are gaining momentum, and we feel we are right. And we are so grateful for you, Lani, and others that are standing with us. So thank you.
Right. And as a courage coach, and at all of the rallies that I go to, I like to leave people with some really encouraging thoughts and possibilities of the things that are coming. So from my perspective, all of this is happening for a reason. Even the entire pandemic, it's a part of the great awakening of humanity. And when we are finished going through exposing all of this corruption and all of these corrupt systems come crumbling down, I do envision a worldwide peace and abundance for everybody. We're no longer going to be a part of this slave matrix system. We're going to be private citizens and sovereign, and we'll all have access to everything that we need and most of the things that we want, and we'll still be able to do all of the things that we're passionate about. And we're going to have a new medical system, med beds, and the possibility of 6,000 cures from all different healing modalities that have been kept and suppressed from humanity. All of these things are going to come out. There's so many things that have been kept from humanity that are all going to come out. And I just want people to envision like a new day, a better way, and the possibility of this golden age of humanity, the age of Aquarius, like Shambhala, utopia, whatever you want to call it. Like there are really good things coming. And I want people to hold on to that vision, because that's how we manifest, by holding on to a vision of something that we want to create with passion and emotion and intention. That's how we bring about the new earth. And this is exactly what the manifestation process is about. I don't want people to focus on like the fear and the control narrative. Okay, we're moving past that. We're exposing the corruption, and we're moving on to creating the new earth that we all desire and deserve.
And to that end, I'll just leave with one quote that I live by. All it takes for evil to succeed is for good men to stand by and do nothing. And I can't do that. I can't stand by and do nothing. And I know you can't either, Lani. So we're moving in the right direction, and I'm just, again, very grateful for this opportunity. Thank you for everything that you're doing, and I can't wait to read the book. And when that's ready, just let us know, and we'll make sure that we get the word out there.
Great. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity. We'll talk to you soon.
Okay.
Bye now.
We are Canadians. Stand tall, stand fast, stand true. We are Canadians.